Hello, I'm Branddy and this is Hound Dog Hollow. I understand that it's been quite some time since we've seen each other, and so I wanted to just check in because a lot has happened and I am searching for ways to re-engage in my community and with my socials in ways that nourish me. And part of that is being upfront about what it is that I'm going through and what I need. So I do have notes here because this is a very challenging topic to talk about. And the only reason I'm doing this is because so many of you have reached out to check on me and to see how I'm doing, and because you're worried because you haven't seen me. And so I do love you guys and I want to explain what's been happening. So I'm just going to open my notes here. Okay, so many of you know that I struggle with infertility. Bad energy built up around that whole thing because it's hard to be so successful in other areas of your life but have this very natural area of your life be completely out of your reach. So I've been taking it easy, and last year was a very busy year for us, very hectic, lots and lots of trauma and stress and tragedy, and I'm trying to build this, but also I have so many other obligations that I really wanted to pull back and work on myself. And I felt like this was a good time to get pregnant. It's always a good time to get pregnant. That's my number one goal every year, is to get pregnant. So on February 26th, I was expecting my menstrual cycle. I was going to start another round of fertility treatment. And before I start every fertility treatment, I need to do a pregnancy test. So I did a pregnancy test and it was positive. I got pregnant all on my own. I was so happy. And it happened at work, so all of my very close friends knew. I called my mom, I called his mom, I called my husband. My son was there and he was on speakerphone and he was like, "Mama, you're pregnant." It was so happy. We were so happy. It was a miracle. I called my OB. He got me in for the 15th of March. I'm gonna wait for them to die down and golly, they are turds. Okay. So February 26th, I found out that I was pregnant. I had conceived naturally. I broke one of my major rules. And I told basically everybody. I was just so happy, so excited. But I also had some pretty intense anxiety. My OB scheduled me for the 15th of March, and I was super happy, and we told our friends and we were getting excited, and I had like her name ready to go. And I was also battling with very intense anxiety. So my doctor did a HCG. Good, it's going up. But if you're a medical person, you know that one HCG is not enough. So it's the hormone in your blood when you're pregnant. And what's really a good marker and there's no real good marker, but what's generally a good marker of healthy pregnancy is that it doubles every 2 to 3 days. And so I had a second one, it was doubling, and I was like, okay, this is happening. I was nauseous, I had morning sickness, I had, all of the symptoms. It was happening, but I couldn't shake this anxiety, and sometimes I'm an anxious person, so I was just trying to roll with it. I called my OB and I was like, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this anxiety, like, what should I do?" And they were like, "Well, let's come in and have a viability ultrasound." So they got me in a week earlier. And, I was like, "Great, perfect, I'll see the baby and I will just calm the F down." But he didn't see anything. I mean, he saw my uterus, he saw my ovaries, but he didn't see what you would expect to see, which would be a gestational sac and a heartbeat. And of course the thing is like, "Oh, maybe it's earlier than we thought," and that's, for some women, that's totally okay. But when you're tracking your cycle as explicitly as I was, I began to feel very upset. And so we started it's called serial HCGs, and so you take your blood every other day and to see if it's doubling like it should. And so I had my blood drawn that day, and I was in tears. I was devastated because I just knew. It wasn't that he couldn't visualize. He visualized everything perfectly, but my uterus was empty. So my results came back, and it had grown, but it hadn't grown appropriately. So I am a nurse, and I am an FNP student. I'm going to be a nurse practitioner here within the next year. And I had a strong feeling that A, it was a miscarriage, or B, it was, you know, an ectopic pregnancy. That's kind of a worst case scenario. It can be life-threatening. So, and there's a couple rare things in between that it could be, but that doesn't speak to viability. And every 2 days I would check and it would go up, but it wasn't increasing appropriately. In the meantime, my friends who were like, oh, how'd it go? How'd it go? And it's just like, okay, it doesn't look well. And I really don't want to talk about it. And I really, really just need space. And they were very good about that. I kind of shut down. I didn't want to talk to anybody but my husband. And we had the arduous task of warning everybody that we had already told our good news, that we had bad news, which honestly I wouldn't wish on anybody. So I returned to work on Thursday, which is hard because so many people at my work knew and were so happy for me. But the first thing I did was I sent an email out saying, like, things are not going well. I don't want to talk about it. So please, let's not talk about that topic. And so I just kind of tried to go through my days pretty normally until Friday the 12th. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was working on a wound. So a pretty complicated nursing procedure. I was the only nurse that day, and I felt a very sharp pain. I managed to make it through my appointment with my patient and send them on their way. I went to the bathroom. I thought, you know, maybe this is just, you know, it's starting or something. I don't know. No big deal. But the pain was so intense I couldn't sit and I couldn't stand upright. So I was like, I'm in trouble because I cannot function. I still have one more patient. It's kind of a complicated thing that requires standing upright for an extended period of time. So I had to ask my team for help. I had to tell my supervisor, like, something's not well. I don't think I'm going to make it today. And I called my OB, who of course wasn't working that late on a Friday. And so I had to call the OB on call, tell my story to their receptionist, who told me they'd call me back. The nurse calls me back, tell my story to the nurse, who tells me, okay, we're going to tell the OB. Then I have to wait. All the while I'm pacing. I can't sit. I can't stand upright. My friends are being super supportive. My team is being really helpful in taking over that patient. I'm getting my stuff together as best as I can because I know, I just know something's not right. And the OB calls me back and she says, go to the emergency room. So I call my husband, who comes and gets me, and we go to the ED. They take me back pretty immediately because this could be a medical emergency, and it was. They got the ultrasonographer in, and she says, oh, you know, I can't really visualize your left ovary, which, as you know, I had just had an ultrasound on Monday, and everything was absolutely visible. She said that it would look like a lot of fluid. And at that point, I knew something was very, very wrong, and we had a medical emergency. But she's not allowed to tell me. So I'm waiting for the doctor, and I told my husband, I said, listen, it sounds like I have a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. That fluid is probably blood. I'm probably bleeding into my guts right now. I almost certainly have to have surgery. And so please, you know, let your parents know that they're going to have to keep our son. And, you know, we're not going anywhere. And of course, the doctor came back, and she's like, it was actually a nurse practitioner. She said, oh, we're going to need the OB on call because I'm not sure what I'm looking at, which I already know what she's looking at, but okay. And then, of course, the OB on call came in, and she was an angel. She was an angel. She's wonderful. And she told me what I knew what it was and that we would need to do surgery. I had eruptic ectopic pregnancy on my left side. We would have to surgically remove it. She would try her best to save what she could of my reproductive organs. And so we were gonna do surgery. At that point, I accepted pain medicine because, I mean, my stomach was getting hard. I was feeling really sick. And they took me to the OB ward because that's where I would be recovering. And, you know, we waited 7 hours for my surgery. And at that point, you're kind of in disbelief. You're not, at least for me, when something moderately horrific happens, I kind of calm down and try to focus on practical things that I need to address. And so that's what we were doing. We needed to find care for our son. We needed to find a way for my husband to, once they took me back to surgery, run home and take care of our animals. And I needed to call my boss and let them know I wasn't going to be able to work. So I was just taking care of those tasks. I wasn't really feeling anything aside from pain. Physical pain. It's painful. It's very painful. I went back for my surgery, which they tried to get me to sign a blank consent form. Don't ever sign a blank consent form. That doesn't work. You need to know what they're doing surgery on, or they might not know what they're doing surgery on. So it took us a bit to straighten that out. And as is my habit before I have anesthesia, I like to be warned so that I can think of my husband and my son's name over and over, because if I die, I want that to be my last thought. I woke up alive. And it had been a more complicated surgery than had been anticipated. So instead of a laparoscopic, meaning they cut little tiny holes and they take a robot, fill your belly with air, take a robot and kind of do what they need to do that way. It required an open abdominal surgery. So basically I had a C-section with no baby. And I lost my left fallopian tube, which I should still be able to have children in the future. And my ovaries were still okay. So then I spent basically 2 nights in the hospital. I couldn't see my son. They did not allow children on the ward. I had a better experience this time with my nurses, so that was something to be grateful for. And my husband was with me the whole time. It was really painful. Really, really painful. Because I'm sensitive to opiates. And so they make me really sick, and so I try very hard not to use them unless I absolutely have to. And so it was hard to stay on top of my pain. On top of that, there's this tidal wave of despair that you felt so high and so happy and so hopeful, only to fall like so far, so quickly, so painfully, so publicly. So that was something I was struggling with. And my husband was just grateful that I was alive. So he was feeling more optimistic than I was, which made me feel even more alone. Because nobody but him would know what this meant to us. But for him, it was more important to have me. And for me, there was no silver lining. Like, yes, I'm alive, but I wasn't really that afraid of dying. But again, perspectives are different, because the doctor spoke to him after my surgery about the challenges that arose, and it took a very long time, and there was all this blood, and just all this other stuff. So for him, it was a different situation. He had a different experience than I did. So that's where we are. So then you spend days in the hospital in the baby ward, listening to other people's babies cry. Then you go home. My son was so sad. But it also felt good because it felt like at least one other person was as sad as I was. But of course he's 6. So then it faded really quickly. I wish it went away as quickly for me. And even though I just had major surgery, I had already been planning to go to my mother's house. And so I was saved by the single-minded fixation that no matter what, I was going to get to my mom. I was going to get to my mom. If I could get to my mom, this would be manageable. And I did. I made it to my mom, and it was probably the best thing I could have done, because instead of sitting alone with my grief at home, I was sitting in my mom's living room with my mother and my sisters, my husband, my son, and we didn't talk about it. But it felt good to just be with people who know you, but also are as invested in you as you are. I mean, probably my mom was the closest to being as close to my personal experience as possible. And when I was well enough to walk, I got to put my feet in the ocean and give her my grief. And that felt really good too. And then we came home. And I did cry then, because it was just like, I have to start trying to get back to regular life, because this was a massive setback with a major surgery, and I still have work and I still have school, and I don't have enough PTO to pay for this time off, and I have to graduate or else I lose my money for this term. So, and of course the animals and the bills and this, it's just so much. You have to get moving. You have to go back to life, because the world is going by without you. And even though you are drowning in grief, time stops for no one. So I got myself up and I got myself dressed. And I put my pants on for the first time in 2 weeks. Because I kid you not, I sat in my mom's living room with no pants for days. That's the kind of comfort. I had a blanket, but still. I put my pants on and I tried to function like a normal person. And I have to go back to my OB on Monday, and I don't want to. But I have to. We all have to do things that we don't want. And I hope I can get cleared so I can go back to work, at least on light duty. Just so I can live. So I can pay my bills. But also so I can get out of my own sneaky hate spiral. So here's what I wanted to talk about. I read this really good book. I'm going to leave it in the link in the description below. If you've gone through this, and 1 in 4 women have a miscarriage at some point in their life, so you probably have. So, in the first month, they say, don't make any huge life decisions. Which is good news, because I have seriously thought of shaving my head, getting a tattoo, and selling all of the shit in my house. So that's been what I've been thinking. But I'm going to hold off. My husband's like, please God, no, don't shave your head, please. Just please don't do that. I love your hair. So the other thing is just showing up and survive. So that's part of the reason that I'm making this video now. Is because I'm showing up. I'm showing up. I'm doing things that I used to love. I'm doing things that I need to do. I'm doing things, and I don't have to do them well, and I don't have to be myself. Sorry, my tummy is upset. This is a hard thing to talk about. Just show up and do the best that you can. Because like I've always said, anything worth doing is worth doing half-ass. And so here we are. find outlets for your pain. And so for me, it's music. You guys know I love to make a playlist. And so I've been listening to music, and not just music that makes me sad, but music that makes me happy. And that's been helpful too. But also reading, journaling, finding support groups. I bought like 20 books on astrology. My husband's going to be real effing surprised when they show up on Monday. Spending my pain. Gotta slow that down. Try not to be too self-destructive. Next, get support. Tell who you want. So I of course told everybody that I had told that I was pregnant. But that was self-preservation because I don't want to fucking talk about it. So that's why I'm telling you guys. Because everybody knows that I've been trying to get pregnant. And so I'd be so grateful if here on my channel we didn't talk about fertility at all. I mean, it'll come up, I'm sure. But I don't want to talk about it. And please don't ask how it's going. For right now, I really don't want to. I will not be addressing any comments like that. And I'm not going to talk about fertility, and I'm not going to talk about my journey, and I don't want to talk about pregnancy or I don't want to fucking hear it. I just can't engage in that. So please don't ask me, and please don't bring it up if you can. I mean, this is just me putting it out into the universe. I don't want to talk about it. So they suggest telling people what doesn't help. I don't want to hear silver linings. I don't want to hear, at least you can get pregnant. At least it was early. You have your other child. I don't want to hear that. And the reason I don't want to hear that is because I know that you're coming from a good place. I respect that you don't know what to say in the face of my grief, and you're just trying to say something that you think is comforting, and I appreciate that sentiment. Really, I do. But I don't want to hear that, because one of the things that I talk about a lot on my channel is being present in your life. And it's not always happy. And I don't want to pretend like it is. It's not happy. It's terrible. I don't want to sit with my grief. I want to grieve this baby, because if I don't do it, nobody in the world is going to grieve her, because nobody feels the way I do about it. I want to honor this trauma. And when people say those things in an effort to be positive, it's invalidating. I know that things are going to get better. I know that I have a good life. I have a lot to be grateful for. And that we're going to get through this. But it doesn't mean that I don't want to feel my very real, very enormous feelings. So please, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to talk about anything related to fertility, pregnancy, or child, babies. And I don't want to hear about, I don't want any positive spins. I don't want any of that. That's my request to my loved ones and my community. What does help is just being here. Just because I don't want to talk about those topics, there's like an infinite amount of topics we could talk about. I want to talk about astrology. I want to talk about herbs. I want to talk about The Mandalorian. I don't know. I want to talk to people. I don't want to be isolated, but I don't want to talk about those topics. I want to go back to some semblance of normalcy where I can have a conversation that nourishes me and doesn't make me feel like I'm drowning. Now, an important part of my healing is for me to find my silver linings. So there's a world of difference between somebody else saying to me, at least this, or blah, 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 whatever it is, and me myself finding meaning in what I'm going through. And maybe I'll talk about that in the future. I've got some soul searching and journaling to do. And of course, find connections that nourish you. You know, I'm talking about my experience here, so this is just long-winded, and you can check in and out however you want, but I am feeling a certain amount of catharsis from this, and so it's very healthy. So I will say, for those of you who are going through it, men and women, or whoever your partner is, we don't go through it the same. Whoever was carrying the baby doesn't feel it like anybody else in the whole fucking world. And so while we are in this together, sometimes you feel so alone, because they don't really know how you feel. And on top of that, he physically has no concept of what it is to have your baby pulled out of you and blow up in your body and almost take you out with it. It's just unreal how different our experience is. But he cares, and he's trying. And while I want him around more than anything, so just try to have some grace for yourself, try to have some grace for your partner, and try to talk as much as you can about how you're going to move through this. And then grief. So a lot of times miscarriages and pregnancy loss are what's called disenfranchised grief. It's grief that nobody in society really pays attention to. We don't talk about it. It's not as valid as if you lost your child, your physical child that the people could see. And so that makes you feel not seen. And we've talked about that a lot on my channel as well. One of the most important things in the world for somebody is to be seen as who you are. I think that's initially, I want somebody to fucking see me. I want you to see that I'm drowning. I'm not okay. I'm smiling and I'm trying to function and I'm standing upright and I'm moving and doing all the right steps in the right direction, but I'm not okay. And that's okay. But I just want to be seen and acknowledged. And that has been very helpful with this workbook and with this video and just talking to my mom and my loved ones. Don't try not to feel your grief, because then you get incomplete grief, and that can be problematic as well. And then there's just some things it really hit home, and so I made notes. So what am I grieving about? When you get pregnant, and I thought it was a little girl, and I saw her in my dreams, and I saw her with my grandfather, and you're grieving this baby you're never gonna hold, this child you're never going to play with, this dream that will never come to fruition. You are also grieving the fact that I will never have a happy pregnancy. I'm always going to be afraid. I'm always going to be anxious. I'm never going to be carefree. I'm always going to be hypervigilant. It's always going to be tainted. And that's okay. You don't have to be happy during pregnancy to have a baby. But it's just like, it makes you a little bit disconnected and envious with all these people with their apps and their just happy, carefree feelings. And you don't get that. And this is not a pity party, but this is part of the steps of acknowledging your feelings so that you can sit with them, acknowledge them, and move forward. You feel a loss of yourself, and that is very challenging. I'm going to talk about it in a little bit, but you just feel like your image of yourself as like a super capable person is damaged because you can't do something that you were designed to do. It comes and goes, comes in waves. And at first the waves are relentless. And then as time goes on, the waves are less. And then it's just like when your husband's cousin is having another baby. Or when you can't stand to see other people's babies or pregnancies because it makes you fucking sick. And then you're embarrassed and ashamed of yourself for being not with it, but It's important to do something to memorialize your loss. And I don't know if I would. I mean, I want to, but I'm not making any big decisions right now. And so I'll keep you guys posted on that. You're gonna hate your body. And you gotta really sit with that and acknowledge that. Because for this one thing that your body couldn't do, your body still does all the rest of the things that you need it to do. You still function, you still work, you still feel joy, you feel pleasure. It's still doing its job. It's just this one thing that's not going well. So give your body grace, treat it well. And then we have, of course, shame. Because you failed. Because you failed publicly. Because I can't do with just so many people do and take for granted. And it really hurts. It makes you feel a little bit bitter and salty. Oh, I am salty. I could brine lots and lots of things with the salt of my tears over here. And that's normal. And don't feel bad. Don't try to push through it. Try to sit with these feelings. Notice it. Say, oh, that's my failure story. Oh no, failure story. Not today. Oh, that's my hate my body story. No, not today. Oh, that's my hate everything about pregnancy and babies story. Nope, not today. So, feel your feelings and don't beat yourself up about them. Don't kick the puppy is what it says in the book, and it really made sense. If a puppy was in distress and it came to you, you would comfort it. Or kid, you would comfort it. You wouldn't be upset with it or hurt it because it was in pain. You would sit with that situation and deal with it. And so offer yourself the same kindness. Try to speak to yourself as if you would speak to a friend. And so while we may be like, just get over it, just toughen up, whatever, move forward. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with your body? Why are you so salty? Just don't let those judgments sit with you. They're not yours. Yours is the grief. That's what yours is. Yours is the shame. Yours is the pain. Yours is the fear. Yours is the anxiety. And that's enough to be dealing with. Try to give yourself grace. And then we move forward. We try to get back to our life. We try to make goals to keep us moving, to keep us fixated, and to help us do better next time. So that's where I've been. I have been on a journey. I'm still on the journey. But I've got to do something to get out of this pit. And so I'm getting dressed. And so we have to go pick up groceries. And so I'm going to unbox these boxes and I'm going to post them on my channel. And when I feel well enough, we're going to work in the garden. And we're going to incubate some eggs, have some chicks and some duckies. I'm going to clean this house and get rid of some stuff because I've just got this terrible irrational fear that there's some kind of bad energy here that caused this to happen to me. I'm just going to try to move forward. And I appreciate you guys for checking in on me. I appreciate you guys for caring. And I appreciate you if you have watched this video for seeing what's going on. I very much needed to let this out. It's not something that we talk about. And I'm not going to be ashamed that this shitty thing happened to me because I didn't do anything wrong. I did all the right things. And I tried so hard. And I hoped so boldly. It's just not enough. And that's just how it is sometimes. And I'm so lucky to not have to do this alone. But if you're going through this, I see you. And what you're feeling is awful, and nothing will make it better. And that's okay. Because there's a good chance that you're going to survive. And there's a good chance, 85%, that you probably will have a rainbow baby. And so I hope that you heal. I hope that you grow as a person. And I hope that your reproductive story gets back on track. And I want to thank you guys for your patience, for your grace, and for just being present with me. And so that's it for today. Please stay tuned for content on my channel. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you soon.